Well, hello, hello. We're so honored to have you with us today, all of our live streamers as well. Let's give them one more hand. Come on, everybody. Let's just welcome them. All over the country, Washington State, California, everywhere. And honestly, I'm just so glad that you decided to come to Freedom House to celebrate Easter. You know, today is a very special day because there's nothing more controversial, nothing has kind of been challenged and more debates. Whether you believe it or not, the resurrection of Jesus Christ has influenced you. I don't know if you know this, but our country was built on the freedom of religion. We had a group of people that decided to come over and start something that we're a part of, whether it doesn't matter what side you're on, you've been influenced by it. There's been more, nothing has been more steeped in tradition than the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Nothing has been more challenged. There's nothing more famous. Also, nothing has brought more joy. Nothing has brought more hope. And I just came to tell you today that the stone has been rolled away. The tomb is empty. Christ is risen. Are you here today? Are you here? Christ is risen. Come on, somebody shout that today. Say, Christ is risen. Come on, look at the cutest person around you. Just find the cutest person around you. It's Easter. Everybody's cute on Easter. Just say, Christ is risen. Christ is risen. So great to celebrate with you today. You know, we're continuing a series that we started last week called I Am. Somebody say, I am. I am. And it's basically we're discovering the 7 declarative statements, representations of what Jesus said when he was on the planet. How many of you have ever met anybody that claimed to be something that they were not? Raise your hand if you've ever met anybody like that. Well, when I first became a Christian, I went to a church and that was kind of out there. It was pushing the envelope a little bit, and we had some characters that came to our church, and it wasn't Freedom House. I'm talking about back in Richmond, Virginia. One particular gentleman would show up often, and he claimed to be John the Baptist. This was 1998, just to make that very, very clear. He had long, flowing brown hair. He had a long, flowing beard. He wore a robe. I know he had some locust and wild honey in his pockets. His name may have been John, but when I sat around him, there was nothing in his life that had been baptized in a very, very long time. Their soap was not involved in his world at all. He carried with him a very fragrance that really demonstrated. Well, Jesus, when he came to the earth, he was very plain in what he said. Here's the 7 statements that he made. I'm going to key in on one of them today. And we talked about this last week. He said, I am the bread of life. You know, when you dine on Christ, you will always be satisfied. He also said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He said, I am the vine. I am the door. I am the light of the world. I am the good shepherd. How many know we need a good shepherd? Come on, wave at me if we need a good shepherd. We always need someone to lead us and guide us. And then today we're going to talk about a time when Jesus made this statement right towards the end of the end of really what we call the beginning, is he said, I am the resurrection and the life. Somebody asked me, what does resurrection mean? Resurrection simply means something that was dead comes back to life. I was thinking about this as I was preparing the message, if I'd ever experienced a resurrection. And I remembered about 4 or 5 years ago, I was sitting, getting ready to drink some coffee. This was early in the morning on just a regular spring day, much like today. And I was sitting at the table, and we have 3 windows, a big bay window and then 2 smaller windows. And I heard this banging, like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, what in the world is that noise? And so I walked back, and there's this bird that is trying to get through my window. I mean, just bam, bam, bam. Well, eventually it stopped. Every year, for the next 3 years, this bird would do the exact same thing at the exact same time. One day, I was doing my same routine, drinking some coffee, reading my Bible, and I heard the same noise. Boom, boom, boom. And then all of a sudden it was boom. I heard this real loud noise, and then I heard nothing. So I walked back to the window. I was like, what's going on? What's happening? So I walked around the corner, and I looked through the window, and there is the bird laying on my deck, not breathing, not moving. So, I was kind of glad and a little sad. I mean, just being honest in church today. Just a little glad, a little sad. So I walked through the door, and as I was walking, I found a little stick, and, I just kind of started poking around at the bird, just trying to see what was going on, kind of deciding what I was going to do. And honestly, I prayed a little prayer. I was like, Lord, I'm just so sad about this bird. And I poked the bird one more time with the stick. The bird jumped up and then flew off. And I'm like, whoa. I hadn't watched Harry Potter or anything like that. I was just like, this stick may have some powers. I mean, I don't know what's going on. It was my first resurrection. I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. So if you have any animals other than cats, I would be more than happy to raise them from the dead, because all cats go to, well, we won't even say that. So anyway, turn to John chapter 11. If you have your Bibles, turn to John chapter 11. I want to talk about this story. That's a joke, by the way, kind of, unless it's involving the cats. John chapter 11, I want to look at this story that Jesus is involved in when he makes this statement, I am the resurrection and the life. Somebody say, I am. It says, verse 1, it says, now a certain man was sick. Certain man was sick. His name was, what does it say next? Lazarus. Say it again, say Lazarus. By the way, the word Lazarus, the name Lazarus means whom God helps. Kind of interesting. Now a certain man was sick. His name was Lazarus. He lived in a town called Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was, say it with me, sick. So now we kind of see a family here. We've got a brother named Lazarus, and then we have two sisters, one named Mary and one named Martha. Now we know Mary because Mary was the one who came to Jesus. She was a prostitute, the Bible tells us, and Jesus freed her. I mean, she got completely and totally delivered. She came and she poured out an alabaster box on Jesus. She washed Jesus' feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. This is the same Mary. She had a sister named Martha and a brother named Lazarus, who we now know is sick. So verse 3, therefore the sisters sent to Jesus, saying, Jesus was not in Bethany, he was in another town, about 20 miles away approximately. Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. If you can underline that, it says, he whom you love is sick. We're going to come back and talk about that in just a minute. Then Jesus heard that. When Jesus heard that, so they sent him a message. Took about a day to get to him. He said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. That's kind of odd. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Then after this, he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, lately the Jews have sought to stone you, and are you going there again? Okay, look up at me for a second. Let's talk about this story, and I'm not going to read the rest of it. You can read the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of pick some things out of it and just kind of relay this story to you. But Jesus is in this other town. He gets a note from some friends of his. Whenever he would visit Bethany, he would stay with Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. Lazarus, his friend, was sick. Now, I want you to notice how Mary and Martha invite Jesus into this situation, which I think is very, very important. Notice that they don't say, Lazarus who loves you is sick, but they say, Lazarus whom you love is sick. See, I think it's really cool that they are pulling on the love of God instead of the conditional kind of fickle love of man. They don't deal with Lazarus' love, they deal with the love of the Father. How many know that God's love never fails? How many know that God's love is always consistent? The Bible tells us it bears all things, it believes all things, it hopes all things, it endures all things. His love never fails. You can always count on the love of God. And so when they ask about his friend Lazarus, they say, hey, just remember, Jesus, you love him. You love him. Now, when I read this, it said, whom you love is sick. I think even on Easter Sunday, even on a beautiful Easter Sunday like today, I think all of us could probably identify with someone whom we love that is sick. Maybe they're dealing with a physical sickness. Maybe they've been diagnosed with cancer. They could be in this room with you today. They could be somebody that you know that you got a phone call this week that has been diagnosed with an incurable disease or something very, very sick. Or they could be emotionally sick. You've watched their life, they're very close to you. You've watched their life kind of plateau off and begin to decline. They're dealing with depression. They're dealing with struggles with life and circumstances. You may know somebody who is spiritually sick. Somebody that you've been hoping that would come to church, that would that would connect with God, because if you know that if they could just find the Jesus that you've met, connect with the one, but you realize that they're spiritually sick. I can remember about 4 or 5 years ago, I came into a realization about this verse that really hit home with me. My wife and family, we decided to take a vacation. It was one of the first vacations we had taken since we started the church, about 3 or 4 years into the church. I told our staff, I said, hey, listen, we're going to go on vacation. Don't call me. Please, let us have 7 days. We just want, unless something's really, really going bad, unless something's burning down. We didn't have a building back then, so it had to have been really rough if they would have called me. So I said, hey, please, we're going to try to get some time away. We really need to kind of decompress and get some, just get some family time. And so we decided to go all the way across the country to San Francisco. I'll never forget this day. It was I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, and I get a phone call. I looked at my caller ID, and it was Debbie Wells. Debbie works on staff at the church. Still to this day, she works on staff. And when I answered the phone, I knew that it had to be something serious, very, very serious. Because Debbie would never call me unless it was something serious. And if we're on vacation, I knew that it had. So when I answered the phone, I could hear just in her voice, there was a certain calmness, but there was also a certain intensity. Pastor Troy, I need your help. We need a miracle. My husband Thurman is on the floor. I walked in and he has fallen down. He's not breathing. His heart isn't beating. My first response is, did you call 911? She says, I called them first and then I called you because I knew we needed to get in touch with God. We needed a miracle right now. And we began to pray, Lord, whom you love is sick. I love Jesus' response back to Martha in a letter, and really, this is what he said. He wasn't with her yet. He hadn't come back to Bethany, but this is what he said, verse 4. When Jesus heard that, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. That's why he didn't go back. That's why he didn't move right away. That's why he waited, the Bible says, for 2 days. His disciples even ask him when he says, I want to go back to Judea. I want to go back to Bethany. Hey, Jesus, listen, you need to be really, really careful because the last time you went there, they wanted to stone you. And we're not talking about recreational stoning. We're talking about like kill you stone, okay? We're talking about death stone. They want to kill you. The Jews don't like you there. The Pharisees don't like you there. We don't need to go back there. But yet Jesus knew that God was going to get glory in this situation. I want to talk real briefly about 3 perspectives that we see in this story from 3 different people, Thomas, Mary, and Martha. The first is Thomas. Now, when I say the name Thomas, one of his disciples, what's the first thing that jumps in your head? Doubting. And that's exactly what Thomas was, is he was dead in his doubt. See, whenever death kind of introduces itself to us, whether it's the death of a dream, the death of a person, it doesn't matter whatever death may try to creep into our life, we're always going to have a response to us. Thomas's response to death was he was dead in his doubts. He was dead in his doubts. When Jesus made the statement, because Lazarus eventually died. And he said plainly in verse 14 and verse 15, then Jesus said to them plainly, making it plain, Lazarus is dead. He's gone. But notice what he says next. He says, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. Now I want you to notice that. I am glad for your sakes that I was not there. Now that's kind of a hard thing to say. And so listen to Thomas's response, verse 16. Then Thomas, who is called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us go that we may die with him. What? I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want Thomas on a long road trip in my ride. I mean, not only is he doubting, but he's a little sarcastic. Well, you know, Jesus, let's die with him. Okay, well, let's talk about this for a second. He's dead in his doubts. This was towards the end of Jesus' ministry, 3.5 years. How many miracles do you think Thomas saw? How many times do you think Thomas saw Jesus do something pretty awesome? Right? I mean, how many times? The Bible even tells us at the end of John The writer of the Gospel of John, he says, if all the miracles of Jesus were written in books, the world couldn't even contain them. I mean, he saw blind eyes get open. He saw him walk on water. Saw Jesus walk on water. He saw paralytics get up from beds. He saw Jesus spit in somebody's eye, and then he could see. Well, God, let's go on back there so we can die with him. Doubts. If we're real, and I think we need to be real in church. If there's any place we need to be real, we need to be real in church. I think all of us face doubts. Hey, listen, I'm a pastor. And I've faced many times where I'm like, what's up with that, God? And honestly, I've been a little sarcastic with him. Got a little upset with him. Like, what's going on? When are you going to come through? When is this going to happen? Are you really up there? I've had those questions many, many times. And I think if we're honest, maybe even today we may have some doubts about the existence of God or whether God's even involved in our world right now. Can I tell you, I think we face the most doubts when our faith is built upon someone else's belief system. Maybe we have a friend or a relative, a grandma, a mom, a dad that has really strong faith. And as a result of that, our faith is what I call a secondhand revelation. See, that's why I believe Jesus made that statement to them. It's good that I wasn't there because I'm going to do something that's going to shake your faith up. That's going to cause you to get rid of your doubts. The second person that I want to talk about is Mary. Mary was dead in her discouragement. She was dead in her discouragement. When Jesus decides to come back and actually begins coming back, it says when he came back, now Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, she went and she met him. But listen to what happened with Mary. But Mary was sitting in the house. She was discouraged. Discouraged. At one time, she had some courage, she had confidence, but now life circumstances have stolen that confidence, and she's discouraged. You know what she decides to do? I'm not going to go meet Jesus. I mean, what is he going to do now? Lazarus is already dead. He could have came earlier. Why didn't he come when he was sick? He could have helped him. I've seen him do all kinds of miracles. She was stuck, thinking that nothing was going to change. I mean, how can he change now? And I think if we're honest, maybe even today we're a little discouraged. When is my marriage going to change? When is my job situation going to change? When are my finances going to change? And here's what we do when we become discouraged. We sit and we settle. We sit and we settle. We settle for status quo. We settle for where we are. We settle for average. We settle for mediocrity. We settle. We just settle in the house and just say, whatever comes our way, we'll take care of it. Instead of taking life by faith and realizing that God has something big for us. We settle in our marriage and go, nothing's going to change. I mean, I've been praying for years. Nothing's going to change him. Nothing's going to change her. We just settle. We settle. Oh, I guess I'll be in this job forever. I'll never get out of college. Oh, this is never going to end. Today I met a young lady in between the services who was working on her doctorate. And tomorrow she makes her defense, whatever that means, and she gets her doctorate. I took a picture with her. I said, I've never taken a picture with a doctor like a bona fide doctor of mathematics. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So proud of her. You know why? Because she decided to never let life discourage her. Don't sit and settle. Don't give up on that. Don't give up. And then some of us may feel like Martha. Verse 21, now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. She was dead in the delay. She was dead in the delay. And I think if we're honest today, some of us may feel the same way. God, when are you going to show up? If you would have showed up last week, then I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in. But Jesus always shows up right at the right time for one reason and one reason alone, that God would get all the glory. That we could take none for ourselves, that he would always be at the pinnacle of famous. Are you with me, guys? And so I think we all, could Jesus have done something? Absolutely. He could have just spoken right then and said, hey, listen, be healed all the way across 20 miles away, and Lazarus would have been healed. He could have made a change. He could have done it. But see, just because Jesus had the power, it doesn't mean it was part of his plan. There was something bigger that he wanted to do. But then something happened that I want you to see in verse 22. Something shifted. There was something in Martha that the delay brought out. Listen to me for a second. Delays in life are extremely important because a delay is not a denial. Look at me for a second. A delay is God framing the character of our faith in order for us to maintain the miracle. Come on, that's good. I'm preaching all right now, and it's Easter Sunday. It allows you to maintain the miracle. And guess what? We face delays all the time. Well, always. But see, something came out of Martha that I want you to see. Verse 22. It says, but even now. Somebody say, even now. Even now. Come on, look at your neighbor. Just say, even now. Even now. Say it with attitude. Even now. Now. Even now. Notice what she says. She says, even now, I know. There's something that this moment brought out of her. You know what it was? Faith. And I think as she was standing in front of Jesus, this caught Jesus' attention. Like, he's waiting for us to have some faith. I'm talking about some I know kind of faith. Like down in my knower. I don't see it. In me, I don't know if it's going to happen, but even now, I know whatever you ask of God, whatever you ask of the Father, it will be done. I think when it came out of her mouth, she's like, where did that come from? How did that come out of my mouth? Because the pressure always brings faith out. Whatever, you may think, I don't have anything in me. Pressure will always bring what's in you out. And she said, even now. We all need even now moments, don't we? We all need an even now, I believe. Even now, I know. That's faith. Even now. When I was on the phone with Debbie, we needed an even now moment. We needed a miracle. 1 minute passed. We're praying. My whole family, we're standing in the hallway at the Embassy Suites Hotel in San Francisco, California. She's standing in her home looking over a body, a lifeless body, just sitting there, not breathing, heart not beating. 2 minutes go by, 3 minutes go by, 4 minutes go by, 5 minutes go by, 6 minutes go by. It seems like an eternity. God, are you going to show up? What's going on? We're on the phone. We didn't leave the phone. I'm praying, God, come on. I know that you can do this. I know that you're the resurrection and the life. I know that you can make this happen. Lord, I know, God, and we're praying and we're believing. Then I start saying, along with Debbie, Thurman, it's time to come back now. Now's the time to come back now. You've got a plan. You've got a purpose. There's something you need to do in your life. And then all of a sudden, about 8 or 9 minutes, he takes a big, deep breath in. The EMT had showed up. They were getting ready to shock him. And he comes back to life. Even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, it will be done for me. And there he stands right over there serving God every Sunday. A miracle. You want to talk to a miracle? Honestly, if you go and meet him, he will give you a hug you'll never forget. And you know what I believe? I believe that's the same way with you and I. Jesus, when she made that statement, when Jesus heard that faith, he said back to her, Martha, Lazarus, your brother will rise again. He's going to rise again. And then what he says, listen, Jesus said to her, this is when he makes the statement, I am the resurrection and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. In other words, whatever you think is dead, I can bring back to life. You feel like your marriage is dead? Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. You feel like your career's over? Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. You feel like your life is over? Hey, listen, don't give up. Just have an even now moment. Just have a moment where you believe that even now, he is the resurrection and the life. Doesn't matter what happened yesterday. He's the resurrection and the life. Present tense, I am the resurrection and the life. Whatever is dead will come back to life, and whatever is alive will live eternally. And then he ends with a statement, and what I believe he's doing, he's pulling more faith out of Martha. He says, do you believe this? Do you believe this? And I think that's the same question that God is posing to you this morning, Easter 2014. Do you believe this?
you gave. Your body was broken, your love poured out. You bled and you died for me there on the cross. You breathed your last as you were crucified. You gave it all for me. Hallelujah, what a Savior. Hallelujah, what a friend. Hallelujah, King forever. And we thank you for the cross. In the darkness, life is laid. The frame of the Father, Son, in agony. He watched his only Son be sacrificed. He gave it all for me. Yeah. Hallelujah, what a Savior.
So I want you to get this picture. Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life, and he stands before a tomb, the tomb of Lazarus. Everybody's wondering what's going to happen next. Everybody's wondering, what is he going to do now? I mean, the Bible tells us he had been dead for 4 days. Now, according to Jewish tradition, the spirit of a person would hover around the grave for 3 days, but this was 4 days. Jesus turns to his disciples and he says, roll away the stone. Roll away the stone. And see, that's exactly what God does, is he exposes the most vulnerable parts of our life. Because everybody said, but you don't understand, Jesus, he stinks now. I like what the King James says. It says, he stinketh. Because, you know, it kind of stinks, doesn't it? When God starts putting his finger on the very thing that's holding us back from the next step. It kind of is uncomfortable. This was an uncomfortable moment, but Jesus is about to turn something that's uncomfortable into destiny. Even right now. And so he stands in front of the tomb, and the Bible tells us in verse 43, he says, now when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. See, I believe that he had to use his name Lazarus, because if he just said come forth, everybody in the entire cemetery would have come out of their graves. He personalized it. And I believe today God is personalizing it for you. I don't know if you hear it, but I hear that same cry for you. Come forth. Come forth. I know it looks dark, really stinks, feels like everything's over. How am I going to make it through this? What's going to happen next? Hey, listen, I don't know, but he does, and he's crying for you. Come forth. Come forth. It's time to step out of your darkness into a new life. It's time to step out of the death of that dream into a new life, a new purpose, a new plan, a new destiny, a new freedom, a new liberty. And then Jesus turns, as Lazarus walks out of the tomb, he turns to his disciples. And I love this part because I think this is a perfect picture of what the church is supposed to be. Lazarus is covered with grave clothes, representation and representative of death, his past. And he turns to his disciples, which I believe is the church, and says, loose him and let him go. See, the role of Jesus is to bring life out of death. The role of the church is to keep us free. I don't know what your experience is or what it's been with church. And listen, I can tell you right now, Freedom House Church is not a perfect church. We're not perfect by any means. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. But we're doing our best to continually unwrap people of their grave clothes. Continually do our best to help people stay free, to stay alive. Would you bow your head and just close your eyes just for a minute? I get you to do that because I want you to get alone with you. Nobody looking around. You're not concerned about what everybody else thinks. It's just between you and God. It's you looking into your soul right now. And I believe God is speaking to you. He's asking you to come forth. Matter of fact, if you're here today and you'd like to get right with God, maybe start over again. Begin again. Begin a new life. Come out of darkness into light. Come out of death into life. Maybe it feels like all your dreams have died. But can I just tell you that God's been holding them, reserving them for right now, for when you say yes. Yeah, maybe it feels like the marriage is in a tomb and nobody's going to raise this one. Can I tell you, Jesus is the resurrection and the life. See, the resurrection is not an event, it's a person. It's a person. And all you have to do is give that person, Jesus Christ, your life. And he will raise things to life that you never thought would ever come back from the dead. Maybe you lived a life with Jesus at one time, but you've kind of stepped away and living a life of sin you know is not pleasing to God. You want to start over today. I'm going to count to 3 in just a second. If you say that's me, I want to start over today. Easter Sunday, April 2014. You want to make a decision to say yes to Jesus Christ. First time, or maybe you want to give your life back to Jesus. I'm going to count to 3 and then we're going to pray together. 1, don't let this opportunity pass you by. Don't say, well, I'll do it another time. No, you need to do it right now. 2, Make that decision. Give your life to God and watch Him raise some things to life. 3, just lift up your hand all across the room. Come on, lift it up high, 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 lift it up high. You want to start over. Lift it up high so I can see it all across the room. Hands all over the room. If you raised your hand, you wanted to raise your hand, I want to lead you in a prayer, and then we're going to do something really cool. If you raised your hand, wanted to raise your hand. Church, I want you to join with them. Make this declaration today. It's a declaration of your faith. It's an even now moment for you right now. Just say this with me. Say, Lord Jesus. Come on, everybody together. Lord Jesus, I believe you died for me. I believe your blood was shed for me. Would you come into my life? Would you forgive me of all my sins? I believe that your blood washes me of all my sin. In Jesus' name, amen. Here's what we're going to do before we go today. I want to ask you if you made a decision or you wanted to make a decision to make that real by stepping out of your seat and coming and lighting one of these candles. Basically declaring in your own life, I'm coming out of darkness into light. I'm coming out of death. I'm coming out of the tomb of despair, the tomb of disappointment, the tomb of doubt, the tomb of discouragement, the tomb of delay. And God, I trust you. I do believe this. And you may have to scoot by some people, but just say, excuse me, pardon me, I'm giving my life to Jesus. Excuse me, pardon me, I'm going to change my life today. I hope you don't mind. Excuse me, pardon me, I'm going to do it. Just get out of your seat right now and just come. And then after you're done, go back to your seat and we're going to dismiss ourselves together. Just get out of your seat. Just come. Anybody that wants to light a candle signifying that today, just get out of your seat and come right now.
Hallelujah, King forever. We thank you for the cross. Hallelujah, it's finished. Hallelujah, it's done. Hallelujah, King forever. We thank you for the cross. Hallelujah, what a Savior. Hallelujah, what a friend. Hallelujah, King forever. We thank you for the cross. Hallelujah, it is finished. Hallelujah, it is done. Hallelujah, King forever. We thank you for the cross. Hallelujah, what a Savior. Hallelujah, what a friend. Hallelujah, King forever. We thank you for the cross. Hallelujah, it is finished. Hallelujah, it is done. Hallelujah, King forever. We thank you for the cross. We thank you for the cross. We thank you. Oh, we thank you for the cross. And we thank you for the cross, Jesus. That's the truth today. It's finished.
It's done. Jesus has accomplished it. He's given us new life. If you just made that decision, we are so excited to be a part of that for you today. As you headed back to your seat, you were given a now what gift. Inside there is a Bible and a book. This is just practical things to help you walk out this decision of a new relationship with God. We want to be here to do anything we can, so we would ask you to fill out that now what card that's in that packet. Just your name, some basic info. We would love to follow up with you and serve you however we can. Like Pastor Troy said, the church, our purpose is to help encourage each other to remain free, to walk it out, and to let loose of those grave clothes. So we would love to be able to do that. Drop it off at some containers on the way out the door today. Fill it out, drop it off on your way out. The last thing I'll mention, next week, all 4 services, we are celebrating with baptisms. All 4 services. So it's always an exciting time. If you made that decision today, I encourage you, we invite you, participate next week in baptism. It's a public demonstration of your faith and what Jesus has done in your life. Maybe you've been a Christian for a while, you've never been baptized. You are also invited to participate. Go online, freedomhouse.cc/baptism, register to do so, and come ready next week to celebrate baptisms. Freedom House, thank you so much for being with us today. We hope you have a happy Easter. We'll see you next weekend. You are dismissed.